Commander Kang Daeho watched the stars through the window of his ship. They looked cold and distant in this part of space. His ship, the Soul's Promise, had been traveling for 3 months. Earth was very far behind them now. "Sir, we are getting close to the target system," said Captain Lee Jae-sung from his seat at the controls. The young officer had been quiet during most of the trip. All of them had been quiet. This was their first mission outside human space. Dr. Park So-min looked up from her computer screen. She had been studying alien data files for weeks. "The readings are strange," she said. "There should be millions of people living in this system. But I only see a few thousand life signs." Daeho frowned. The reports from Earth said this area was full of busy trade routes. Ships should be everywhere. Instead, they saw nothing but empty space and a few small mining stations. "Take us closer to that asteroid field," Daeho ordered. "But keep us hidden." The Soul's Promise moved slowly toward a group of floating rocks. As they got closer, they could see aliens working on the asteroids. The workers looked thin and tired. Large machines dug into the rocks while the aliens carried heavy loads. "Those are Veltar," So-min said, looking at her scanner. "I read about them in the old files. They used to be great warriors. Now look at them." The Veltar had thick gray skin and 4 arms. Even from far away, Daeho could see they moved like broken people. Their heads hung low. They worked without talking to each other. "Sir?" Jae-sung said in a worried voice. "Big ships coming our way." 3 huge black ships appeared from behind a large asteroid. They were 10 times bigger than the Soul's Promise. Strange symbols covered their dark metal sides. The ships moved toward the mining station like hungry sharks. Daeho ordered his crew to hide behind a large rock. They watched as the big ships stopped near the workers. A voice came over the radio in a language none of the humans understood. But the tone was clear. It was an order. The Veltar workers stopped what they were doing. They gathered in groups and waited. Small ships came out of the big vessels. Soldiers in black armor got out and walked among the workers. The soldiers were tall and thin with pale skin. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness of space. "Kethvar," So-min whispered. "The ruling race. I have read about them." One of the soldiers pointed at an old Veltar worker. The worker shook his head and stepped back. The soldier raised his weapon. A bright flash lit up the asteroid. When the light faded, the old worker was gone. Only dust remained. The other workers did not move. They did not cry out. They just stood there like statues. This made Daeho feel sick. No one should accept death so easily. The soldiers picked out more workers. They loaded them onto the small ships. The chosen workers did not fight. They walked onto the ships like they were walking to their own graves. "Why don't they fight back?" Jae-sung asked. "Because they have forgotten how," So-min said sadly. After the soldiers left with their prisoners, one old Veltar remained near the humans' hiding spot. His name was Thekmal. He had worked in these mines for 50 years. When he saw the human ship, he was not afraid. He was curious. Daeho decided to talk to him. They met on a small asteroid between the mining station and their ship. Thekmal spoke some human words. He had learned them from old trade records. "You are from the small world," Thekmal said. "The one they call Earth?" "Yes," Daeho replied. "We came to explore, to learn about other races." Thekmal laughed, but it was a sad sound. "There is nothing to learn here. Only how to suffer, how to die slowly." The old alien told them about the Kethvar Empire. For 3,000 years they had ruled the galaxy. They did not just conquer worlds. They broke the spirits of entire races. They taught children that fighting was useless. They made parents believe their children were born to serve. "My grandfather was a war chief," Thekmal said. "He could break rocks with his bare hands. He led armies across the stars. Now his great-grandson carries rocks for alien masters." Daeho felt anger growing in his chest. "Why do you let them do this?" "Because we cannot win," Thekmal said. "They have too many ships, too many weapons. They have taught us that we are weak. After so many years we believe them." The old Veltar showed them scars on his arms. "These are from the teaching machines. They put us in them when we are young. The machines show us pain and fear until we stop wanting to fight, until we stop dreaming of freedom." So-min recorded everything Thekmal told them. The Empire's power was not just about having better weapons. It was about making people believe they could never win. It was about killing hope before it could grow. "Have any races ever fought back?" Daeho asked. "Some tried," Thekmal said. "The Zilthresh fought for 10 years. The Mordek lasted only 1. The Empire destroyed their homeworlds, killed their families, made examples of them for others to see. As if summoned by their conversation, more HFY ships appeared in the distance. These were even bigger than the first ones. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Punishment fleet, Tekmol said in a quiet voice. Someone somewhere has not paid their tribute on time. The humans watched in horror as the fleet surrounded a small moon that served as a farming colony. Thousands of innocent people lived there, families, children, workers who had done nothing wrong except fail to meet an impossible deadline. The HFY ships opened fire. The moon exploded in a ball of fire and light. In seconds, an entire world was gone. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who disappoint the Empire. Daeho's hands shook with rage. In all his years as a soldier, he had never seen such casual cruelty. The HFY had destroyed a world like it was nothing. Like stepping on an ant. This cannot continue, he said. Tekmol looked at him with sad, ancient eyes. Young human, you do not understand. This is how it has always been. This is how it will always be. The strong rule. The weak serve. The Empire is eternal. But as Daeho looked at the burning remains of the moon, he made a decision. Some things were worth fighting for, even if you could not win. Some evils were too great to ignore. The humans said goodbye to Tekmol and returned to their ship. As they prepared to leave, the old Veltar gave them a gift, a small crystal that contained the history of his people. Their songs, their stories, their dreams from before the darkness came. Remember us, he said. Remember that we were once warriors, once free. The soul's promise turned toward home, carrying with it the weight of what they had seen. The galaxy was ruled by monsters. Entire races had forgotten how to hope. The darkness seemed complete and eternal. But in the depths of space, something new was stirring. Humanity had seen the face of ultimate evil, and unlike the broken races of the galaxy, humans had never learned that some fights could not be won. The war for the galaxy's soul was about to begin. The meeting room on Earth Station Alpha was filled with angry voices. Commander Kang Daeho stood at the front, showing pictures from his mission. The images were terrible. Destroyed worlds, enslaved people, and the casual cruelty of the HFY Empire. This is not our problem, said Admiral Chen from Earth Defense Command. We cannot fight an empire that has ruled for 3,000 years. We would be destroyed. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Tae-young disagreed. He was a Special Forces officer who had fought in Earth's worst wars. Sir, we cannot ignore this. These aliens are being murdered by the millions. And if we interfere, we will join them, Admiral Chen replied coldly. Dr. Park So-min stepped forward with her research files. The Empire is not as strong as it appears. Their power comes from fear, not superior technology. If we can break that fear, we can break their control. The argument went on for hours. In the end, Admiral Chen made his decision. Earth would not send a military fleet. It would not start a war with the HFY Empire. The human race would stay safe by staying quiet. But some orders are meant to be broken. 3 weeks later, Daeho's ship returned to alien space. This time, they were not alone. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Tae-young was with them, along with Major Yoon Ha-na and Sergeant Choi Min-ho. They had volunteered for an unofficial mission, one that Earth Command knew nothing about. If we get caught, we are on our own, Daeho told his team. Earth will deny we exist. Good, Tae-young said with a hard smile. I work better without politicians watching over my shoulder. They found Tekmol still working in the asteroid mines. The old Veltar was surprised to see them return. When they told him their plan, his 4 eyes grew wide with fear and hope. You want to teach us to fight? He asked, but fighting only brings death. The Empire will destroy us all. Maybe, Tae-young said. But living on your knees is not really living at all. The first lesson was simple: how to make a bomb from mining supplies. Choi Min-ho showed a group of young Veltar workers how to mix chemicals they used every day. The result was a small explosion that could destroy a HFY patrol vehicle. The aliens were amazed. We use these chemicals every day, one of them said. We never knew they could be weapons. Everything can be a weapon if you know how to use it, Choi replied. Major Yoon Ha-na worked on a different problem. The aliens had no way to talk to each other across the galaxy. The Empire controlled all communication systems. Ha-na built small devices that could send secret messages through space. Each device was hidden inside normal mining equipment. Now you can coordinate your actions, she explained to Tekmol. When one group strikes, others can strike at the same time. The Empire cannot be everywhere at once. The first real test came when a Kethavar supply convoy entered the asteroid field. Instead of hiding like always, the Veltar workers followed Tae-Young's plan. They used their new bombs to destroy the road between asteroids. The convoy was trapped. For the first time in generations, Veltar warriors fought back. They used mining tools as weapons. They coordinated their attacks using Hana's communication devices. The convoy guards were completely surprised. They had never faced real resistance before. The battle was over in minutes. 3 Kethavar transport ships were destroyed. Food and supplies meant for Empire soldiers were distributed to hungry workers instead. Most importantly, the aliens learned something they had forgotten. They could fight. They could win. News of the victory spread through Hana's secret network. On the factory world of Mordesh, enslaved workers heard the story and began to hope. Maybe they too could fight back. Tae-Young took a small team to Mordesh. The planet was covered in huge factories that made weapons for the Empire. Millions of aliens worked there in terrible conditions. They lived in small metal boxes and ate food that barely kept them alive. The workers came from many different species: the insect-like Zilthresh, the plant-based Mordak, and others. All of them had the same empty look in their eyes. They had given up hope long ago. "We must be careful," Tae-Young told his team. "If we move too fast, the Empire will destroy this entire world." He started small. A few workers learned how to sabotage production lines. Machines began breaking down more often. Weapons came off the assembly lines with small defects that would make them useless in battle. Each success brought more volunteers. Workers began to remember that they were more than just tools for the Empire. They had names. They had families. They had reasons to fight. The breakthrough came when Choi Minho demonstrated human explosives to a group of factory supervisors. They were aliens who had been promoted above the regular workers, but were still slaves to the Empire. Choi showed them how a small bomb could destroy an entire production facility. "You want us to destroy our own workplace?" one supervisor asked. "I want you to destroy their workplace," Choi replied. "This factory makes weapons that keep you enslaved. Every gun that does not get made is one less weapon pointed at your children." That night, explosions lit up the sky over Mordesh. 7 weapons factories were destroyed in coordinated strikes. The supervisors had taught regular workers how to make and place the bombs. For the first time in decades, the planet's weapon production stopped completely. The Empire's response was swift and terrible. Admiral Kreshter arrived with a battle fleet of 50 ships. His message to the planet was simple: surrender the rebels or face complete destruction. The workers of Mordesh faced their first real test. Would they give up their new hope to save their lives? Or would they choose to fight even if it meant death? The answer came from an unexpected source. The Zilthresh workers, who had always been the most obedient, stood together in the main factory square. Their leader, an insect named Zigtal, spoke for all of them. "We choose to die as free beings rather than live as slaves," he said. The other species joined them. Plant-like Mordak workers put down their tools. Flying Ketanari stopped their cargo deliveries. The entire planet went on strike. Admiral Kreshitar was furious. He had expected quick surrender. Instead, he faced something the Empire had not seen in centuries: unified resistance. His ships surrounded the planet, weapons charged and ready to fire. But destroying Mordesh would cost the Empire more than just one world. The planet produced 30% of their weapons. Without it, their military would be seriously weakened. Kreshtar found himself in an impossible position. While the Admiral tried to decide what to do, Tae-Young's team worked frantically to spread the rebellion further. Hana's communication network carried news of Mordesh's brave stand to dozens of other worlds. On each planet, enslaved workers heard the message and began to hope. Some worlds joined the rebellion immediately. Others waited to see what would happen to Mordesh. But across the galaxy, something was changing. The Empire's subjects were beginning to remember that they outnumbered their masters by millions to one. The old Veltar named Thekmol sent a message to all rebel groups through Hana's network. His words were simple but powerful. "My children, we have forgotten who we were. We have let fear make us weak. But today, I remember my grandfather's words. It is better to die fighting than to live crawling." The stars themselves cry out for justice. Let us answer their call. On Mordesh, the workers prepared for the Empire's attack. They had few weapons and no military training. Most of them would probably die. But they were no longer afraid. They had tasted freedom, and nothing could take that away from them. Admiral Kreshtar finally made his decision. He would not destroy the planet. Instead, he would land troops and capture the rebels alive. He would make examples of them that would crush this rebellion before it could spread. But as his ships prepared to land, he received troubling reports. Rebellions were starting on 17 other worlds. His fleet was needed elsewhere. The fire of freedom was spreading faster than he could put it out. The humans watched from their hidden ship as history began to change. They had come to this galaxy as explorers. Now they were becoming something else, the spark that would light a fire across the stars. In the distance, more Kethvar fleets were moving to crush the growing rebellions. The Empire was mobilizing its full military might. The real war was about to begin. But in the asteroid mines, in the factory worlds, and in the hidden places where hope had been reborn, the word was spreading. The humans had shown them something important. The Empire could bleed. The mighty Kethvar could be defeated. For the first time in 3,000 years, the slaves of the galaxy were remembering how to be warriors. Admiral Joe Sung-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching 12 human warships move through space in perfect formation. Earth Command had finally decided to act. The reports from Daeho's team could no longer be ignored. An empire that enslaved entire species was too dangerous to leave alone. "Sir, we are entering the Zelthmar system," reported his navigation officer. "Admiral Kreshitar's fleet is waiting for us." Joe looked at the tactical display. 50 massive Kethvar dreadnoughts hung in space like black daggers. Each one was 3 times larger than his biggest ship. Any normal commander would have turned around and fled, but Joe was not a normal commander. He had studied every report about Kethvar tactics. He knew their weaknesses. "All ships, prepare for engagement," he ordered. "Remember the plan. We are not here to trade shots with their big guns. We are here to show them something they have never seen before." On the planet below, Colonel Nam Yunji was preparing her Marines for their own mission. She had studied the Kethvar military structure. Their soldiers were used to fighting weak, broken enemies. They had never faced humans in combat. "Listen up," she told her troops. "These aliens think they are gods of war. Today we show them what real soldiers look like." Captain Lim Dong-wook was already in his fighter, leading a squadron of 12 small, fast ships. His mission was different from anything the Kethvar had ever encountered. He was going to take the fight to their safe ground forces. Admiral Kreshitar watched the small human fleet approach. He was amused by their foolishness. 12 tiny ships against his mighty armada? This would be over in minutes. "All ships, attack formation," he commanded. "Show these insects the power of the Empire." The Kethvar fleet moved into their traditional battle line. For 3,000 years, this formation had won every major space battle. Their massive ships would exchange fire with the enemy at long range until the weaker fleet was destroyed. But the human ships did not form a battle line. Instead, they scattered in all directions like a swarm of angry bees. They moved faster than anything the Kethvar had ever seen. Their weapons were smaller but more accurate. "What are they doing?" Kreshtar demanded as human ships darted between his dreadnoughts. "This is not how space battles are fought." Joe smiled as he watched his plan work perfectly. The Kethvar ships were too big and slow to track his fast-moving vessels. Their heavy weapons could not hit targets that moved so quickly. Meanwhile, human missiles struck at weak points in the alien ship's armor. "Target their weapon systems," Joe ordered. "We do not need to destroy them, just make them helpless." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of 2 fleets standing apart and shooting at each other, the humans fought like wolves attacking a herd of huge, slow animals. They bit and ran, struck and vanished, always staying 1 step ahead of the enemy's clumsy responses. 3 Kethvar dreadnoughts lost their main weapons to precise human attacks. 2 more had their engines damaged and could barely move. The mighty Imperial fleet was being taken apart piece by piece. "Impossible," Kreshitar whispered. "Our ships are the finest in the galaxy. Our tactics have never failed." "Your tactics work against enemies who fight like you," Joe said over the radio. "But we learned to fight different wars on different worlds. We learned that being big does not always mean being strong." While the space battle raged above, Yunji's Marines were preparing to board one of the damaged Kethvar ships. The aliens had never experienced boarding actions. Their ships were not designed to repel invaders. "Remember, Yunji told her troops as they crossed from their ship to the enemy vessel. These soldiers have never faced real resistance. They expect their enemies to surrender at the first sign of trouble. The Marines cut through the HFY ship's hull like it was made of paper. Their advanced cutting tools made quick work of alien metal. Within minutes, they were inside the enemy command ship. The HFY soldiers inside were tall and pale, with glowing red eyes that showed their surprise and fear. They wore beautiful armor that looked impressive but was not designed for real combat. They carried weapons that were more for show than for fighting. "Surrender now and you will not be harmed," Yunji announced as her Marines spread through the ship. The alien soldiers looked at each other in confusion. No one had ever asked them to surrender before. They were the ones who demanded surrender from others. They did not know what to do. Some tried to fight, but their ceremonial weapons were no match for human military equipment. Others simply stood there in shock as the Marines moved past them. A few actually did surrender, dropping their weapons and raising their hands. "This is wrong," one HFY officer said to Yunji. "We are the masters. You are supposed to fear us." "Fear has to be earned," Yunji replied, "and you have not earned ours." The Marines reached the ship's bridge in less than an hour. They captured the command crew without a single human casualty. For the first time in galactic history, a HFY capital ship had been taken by boarding action. But the greatest shock was yet to come. Captain Lim Dong-wook led his fighters toward the planet's surface where Kreshtar had a major military base. The base was protected by massive ground weapons and shield generators. It was supposed to be completely safe from attack. The HFY had never considered that enemy ships might enter a planet's atmosphere. Their military doctrine said that space battles happened in space and ground battles happened on the ground. The two were kept completely separate. Dong-wook's fighters screamed through the planet's sky like metal meteors. They dove toward the military base at speeds that terrified the alien defenders. Ground-based weapons tried to track them but could not move fast enough. "All fighters target the shield generators," Dong-wook ordered. "Once those are down, the base is defenseless." The human fighters struck with surgical precision. Their missiles found weak points in the base's defenses. One by one, the shield generators exploded. The supposedly impregnable fortress was left naked and helpless. Kreshtar watched from his damaged flagship as his ground base burned. In one day, the humans had broken every rule of warfare he knew. They had shown that his mighty fleet could be defeated. His ships could be captured and his safe bases could be destroyed. "How is this possible?" he asked his advisors. "We have the largest ships, the most advanced weapons, the finest soldiers. How can these primitives defeat us?" "Because they fight like we used to fight," said an old HFY general named Vashatar, "before we became rulers of the galaxy. Before we forgot that war is about more than just having bigger weapons." The news of the human victory spread across the galaxy through secret rebel networks. On dozens of worlds, enslaved aliens looked up at the stars and felt something they had not felt in generations: hope. On the mining world where Thekmol worked, the old Veltar gathered his people around him. "My children," he said, "the impossible has happened. The Empire has been defeated in battle. The humans have shown us that our masters can bleed." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On factory worlds and slave planets, in hidden camps and secret meetings, the word spread. The HFY Empire was not invincible. The humans had proven it, but the Empire was far from finished. Kreshtar's defeat was just one battle in what would become a galaxy-wide war. The Emperor himself was already mobilizing reserve fleets. New armies were being prepared. The full might of a 3,000-year-old empire was stirring to life. Admiral Joe received new orders from Earth. More human fleets were coming, but they would take months to arrive. Until then, his small force would have to hold the line against everything the Empire could throw at them. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we are getting messages from rebel groups across the galaxy. They want to coordinate their attacks with our next moves." Joe smiled. The humans had come to this galaxy alone, but they were no longer fighting alone. Across the stars, enslaved species were remembering their warrior heritage. The spark of rebellion was becoming a fire that would consume the Empire. "Send this message to all rebel groups," Joe commanded. "Tell them that today was just the beginning. The Empire has ruled through fear for 3,000 years. But fear only works if people believe they cannot win. We have shown them that victory is possible." On the surface of Zelthmar, Yunji's Marines were training local rebels in human combat tactics. These aliens had lived as slaves for so long that they had forgotten how to be soldiers. But they were quick learners and eager students. Fighting is not just about weapons, Yunji taught them. It is about working together. It is about never giving up. It is about believing that some things are worth dying for. The rebels nodded and practiced with fierce determination. They had watched humans defeat the mighty Kethvar fleet. If these strange aliens from a distant world could stand up to the Empire, then perhaps they could too. In space above, Dongwook's fighters continued to patrol the system. They had painted symbols on their ships, not human symbols but the ancient war markings of the Veltar, the Zilthresh, and other enslaved races. The message was clear. This was not just a human war anymore. As the first day of open warfare ended, both sides prepared for what was to come. The Empire would strike back with everything it had. The rebels would face their greatest test. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, the General Park Hyun-soo stood in the command center of the human base on Zelthmar, looking at a galaxy map covered in red lights. Each light represented a world in rebellion. What had started as a few small uprisings was now a galactic revolution. Sir, we have confirmation of simultaneous uprisings on 47 star systems, reported Major Han Seok-jin. The Empire's forces are spread thin trying to respond to all of them. Commander Shin Yu-jin walked into the room with urgent news. She had been working undercover in Kethvar space for weeks, gathering intelligence about the Empire's leadership. What she had learned would change everything. The Emperor is dead, she announced quietly. Everyone in the room stopped talking. The Kethvar Emperor had ruled for 800 years. He was considered immortal by his subjects. His death would shake the Empire to its core. How? Hyun-soo asked. Natural causes 3 months ago, Yu-jin replied. But they have been hiding it. The ruling council is fighting among themselves about who should replace him. Half the military does not even know their supreme leader is gone. This was the break the rebellion needed. Hyun-soo immediately began planning the largest coordinated attack in galactic history. While the Empire's leadership was divided, the rebels would strike everywhere at once. On the insect world of Zilthresh Prime, Queen Ziktal prepared her warrior drones for battle. The Zilthresh had been among the most enslaved races in the galaxy. The Empire had used mind control devices to break their hive-mind connections, but human technology had helped them reconnect. My children, the Queen buzzed to her millions of drones. For 500 years we have lived as broken insects. Today we remember that we are a hive. We are one mind, one purpose, one unstoppable force. The Zilthresh uprising was terrifying to watch. Millions of insect warriors moved with perfect coordination. They swarmed over Kethvar military bases like a living wave. The Empire's soldiers had never faced an enemy that could think and move as one giant organism. On the water world of Mordesh, the plant-like aliens used their connection to nature in ways the Empire had never imagined. The forests themselves became weapons. Trees attacked Kethvar vehicles with their branches. Vines wrapped around alien soldiers and would not let go. The very ground opened up to swallow enemy equipment. The Empire taught us that nature was weak, said Velkor, leader of the Mordesh rebellion. They forgot that nature is patient. We have been growing strong in secret for generations. Now the forests fight back. But the most important battle was happening in space around the Kethvar capital system. Yu-jin's intelligence operation had revealed the Empire's greatest weakness, their leaders, had become completely dependent on automated systems and slave labor. They do not know how to run their own empire, Yu-jin explained to Hyun-soo. For centuries, they have had machines and slaves do everything for them. If we can disrupt those systems, their entire government will collapse. Hyun-soo smiled grimly. Then let us give them a taste of what happens when the slaves stop working. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of attacking the Kethvar military directly, the humans would attack their supply systems. Every factory, every transport route, every communication hub would be hit at the same time. Seok-jin coordinated the logistics from his command post. He had learned to speak a dozen alien languages and understood the needs of each rebel group. When the Veltar needed weapons, he arranged for captured Kethvar equipment to be delivered. When the Zilthresh needed food for their warriors, he redirected Imperial supply convoys to feed them instead. This is not just about winning battles, Seok-jin explained to his staff. This is about building a new kind of galaxy. one where different species help each other instead of fighting each other. The Empire's response grew more desperate by the day. Admiral Kreshtar, still smarting from his defeat at Zelthmar, was given command of a massive fleet tasked with crushing the rebellions. But every time his ships arrived at a rebel world, they found it defended by more than just local forces. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, using stealth technology the Kethvar could not detect. Veltar warriors fought alongside Zilthresh drones and Mordesh plant shapers. The rebellion had become something the Empire had never faced, a united front of multiple species working together. This is impossible. Kreshtar raged after another failed attack. Different species cannot work together. They are natural enemies. It goes against the order of the universe. But Yujin's intelligence network had learned something important about the Empire's history. The Kethavar had not always been rulers. Long ago, they had been just another species struggling to survive. They had gained power by convincing other races that cooperation was impossible, that some species were born to rule and others to serve. They built their empire on a lie, Yujin reported to Hyunsu. They made everyone believe that conflict between species was natural. But the truth is they were afraid of what would happen if different races worked together. The humans proved that cooperation was not only possible but powerful. When Veltar strength combined with Zilthresh coordination and Mordesh environmental skills, the result was unstoppable. The Empire's divide-and-conquer tactics no longer worked. The turning point came during the Battle of the Seven Suns. 7 different rebel fleets converged on a major Imperial shipyard. Each fleet was made up of ships from multiple species, commanded by officers who had learned to trust each other completely. Kreshtar brought his most powerful battle group to defend the shipyard. He expected to face 7 separate attacks that he could defeat one by one. Instead, he found himself fighting what was essentially one massive fleet that moved with perfect coordination. Human tactical doctrine guided the overall strategy. Veltar warriors provided shock troops for boarding actions. Zilthresh drones swarmed over enemy ships in ways that confused automated defense systems. Mordesh plant shapers used biological weapons that could eat through metal hulls. They fight like they are one species, one of Kreshtar's officers observed with growing fear. How do we defeat an enemy that has no weaknesses because they cover each other's weaknesses? The answer was that they could not. The Imperial fleet was destroyed, and the shipyard was captured intact. More importantly, the rebellion had proven that they could not just win individual battles, they could win the war. News of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. On every enslaved world, people heard the message. The Empire was not just losing battles, it was losing the war. The rebels were not just fighting back, they were winning. The psychological effect was devastating to Imperial morale. Kethavar soldiers began to surrender rather than fight impossible battles. Some Imperial governors tried to negotiate with rebel forces rather than face destruction. The Empire's will to fight was crumbling, but the rebels faced their own challenges. Success brought new responsibilities. They had to govern the worlds they liberated. They had to maintain unity between species that had been taught to mistrust each other. They had to prepare for the Empire's inevitable final counterattack. Hyunsu called a council of rebel leaders from across the galaxy. Representatives of dozens of species gathered on the liberated world of New Hope, a planet renamed by its former slaves. "We are winning this war," Hyunsu told the assembled leaders. "But winning is not enough. We must decide what kind of galaxy we want to build when this war is over." The debate was intense. Some species wanted revenge against their former oppressors. Others wanted to simply divide up the Empire's territory among themselves. A few thought they should just destroy everything Kethvar and start over. But Thekmol, the old Veltar who had first met the humans, stood up and spoke with the wisdom of his years. "My friends," he said, "if we become like our oppressors, then we have not truly won. We must build something better than what came before. We must prove that cooperation is stronger than domination." The council agreed to create the Galactic Liberation Alliance, a federation of free worlds where each species would have an equal voice. It would be governed by representatives elected by their own people, not appointed by distant emperors. But first, they had to finish the war. The Empire still controlled the capital system and the core worlds. The Kethavar leadership was preparing for a final, desperate battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. They will throw everything they have at us, Yujin warned. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon in their arsenal. They know this is their last chance. Hyunsu nodded grimly. Then we will show them what happens when free beings fight for their future. We will show them that no empire built on slavery can stand against the united will of the oppressed. As rebel fleets gathered for the final assault on the Kethvar capital, something unprecedented was happening. Humans, Veltar, Zilthresh, Mordesh, and dozens of other species were working together as equals. They shared technology, tactics, and dreams of a better future. The Empire had ruled by keeping everyone apart and afraid. The rebellion was winning by bringing everyone together and giving them hope. The final battle was coming, and the outcome would determine whether the galaxy continued to live in darkness or finally stepped into the light. Fleet Admiral Quan Jamin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Around him, ships from 30 different species moved in perfect formation toward the Kethvar home system. Humans, Veltar, Zilthresh, Mordesh, and dozens of other races had joined together for this final assault. "Sir, long-range sensors show the entire Imperial fleet waiting for us," reported his tactical officer. "Over 3,000 ships defending Kethvar Prime." Jamin nodded calmly. He had expected this. The Empire was making its last stand at the heart of their ancient power. Every ship they had left was gathered around their capital world, protected by orbital defense platforms that had never been challenged in 3,000 years. Ambassador Li Mi-young was also aboard the flagship. She would lead the peace negotiations after the battle was won, but first they had to win it. "The defensive stations are massive," she observed, looking at the tactical display. "Each one is bigger than our largest ship." "Size is not everything," Jamin replied. "We have learned that lesson many times in this war." The Allied fleet was outnumbered 3-1, but they had advantages the Empire could not match. They fought for freedom while the Kethvar fought only for power. They worked together while their enemies remained divided and suspicious of each other. As they entered the outer edge of the Kethvar system, the enemy fleet moved to intercept them. At the front of the Imperial formation was Admiral Kreshitar's personal dreadnought, the Eternal Dominion. The massive ship was 10 kilometers long and bristled with enough weapons to destroy a planet. "Admiral Kreshitar is signaling us," the communication officer reported. "Put him through," Jamin ordered. The alien admiral's pale face appeared on the main screen. His red eyes glowed with hatred and desperation. "Human insects," he snarled. "You have caused enough chaos. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." "Admiral Kreshitar," Jamin replied calmly, "you have enslaved the galaxy for 3,000 years. Today that ends. Surrender your fleet and your people will be treated with mercy." Kreshitar laughed bitterly. "The Empire does not surrender to slaves. We are the masters of the galaxy. We have always been the masters." "Not anymore," Jamin said, and closed the communication channel. The battle began with the Empire's traditional tactics. Their massive ships formed battle lines and opened fire with their heaviest weapons. Beams of energy powerful enough to crack moons lanced across space toward the Allied fleet. But the Allies did not fight like the Empire expected. Instead of meeting the Imperial line head-on, they scattered into smaller groups. Human ships used their speed and stealth technology. Feltar vessels relied on their heavy armor and powerful close-range weapons. Zilthresh fighters swarmed like angry insects around the slower enemy dreadnoughts. "They are not following proper battle doctrine," one of Kreshitar's officers complained. "How can we defeat an enemy that does not fight according to the rules?" "Because the rules were made by those who wanted to keep winning," Kreshitar realized with growing horror. "These aliens have made new rules. The orbital defense platforms should have been the Empire's strongest advantage. Their weapons were more powerful than anything on the Allied ships. But the platforms had a fatal weakness: they could not move. General Song Woo-jin led a special assault force directly at the largest platform. His ships took terrible damage from the station's weapons, but they kept coming. When conventional attacks failed, he ordered something no military commander had ever ordered before. "All ships ramming speed," he commanded. "We will break their defenses with our sacrifice." But as Song's ship rushed toward the defense platform, something unexpected happened. A Veltar battleship moved between him and the enemy guns. The alien vessel absorbed the platform's fire, sacrificing itself to protect the human ship. "Why?" Song asked over the radio. "Why did you do that?" "Because you would do the same for us," came the reply from the dying Veltar captain. "Because we are no longer alone in this fight." More ships followed the Veltar's example. Zil-Thresh fighters threw themselves at the platform's weapons to protect the larger vessels. Mordesh plant ships used their biological hulls to absorb energy that would have destroyed metal ships. Dozens of different species sacrificed themselves to protect their allies. The concept of willing self-sacrifice for others was completely alien to Kethvar psychology. Their tactical computers could not process it. How do you fight an enemy that considers dying for others to be an honor, rather than a failure? This is impossible, Kreshitar's tactical officer reported. They are fighting in ways our systems cannot predict or counter. They work together like they are one organism, but they are dozens of different species. Song's assault force broke through the orbital defenses and landed on the largest platform. His Marines fought alongside Veltar warriors and Zil-Thresh drones in the station's corridors. The platform's defenders had never faced boarding actions before. They surrendered quickly. With the orbital defenses falling one by one, the Imperial fleet found itself trapped between the planet's surface and the Allied armada. Kreshtar tried to break out, but everywhere he turned, he found Allied ships waiting for him. The final moment came when a massive Zil-Thresh Queen ship positioned itself directly in front of Kreshtar's flagship. The Imperial Admiral fired every weapon he had, but the insect vessel's living hull absorbed the damage and kept coming. Impossible, Kreshitar whispered as the alien ship latched onto his hull. They are just insects, just slaves. But when Zil-Thresh warriors swarmed into his ship, they were not the broken, obedient creatures he remembered. These were beings who had rediscovered their pride and their purpose. They fought with the fury of the enslaved finally set free. Kreshitar was captured alive, along with most of his command staff. The Imperial fleet began surrendering ship by ship as their commanders realized the war was lost. On the surface of Kethvar Prime, the planet's ancient rulers watched their empire die. Some tried to flee to distant colonies. Others prepared to fight to the death in their palace fortresses. A few, led by an old general named Vashitar, chose a different path. "This war is over," Vashitar announced to the Imperial Council. "We have lost everything. Our fleets are destroyed. Our slaves have become our conquerors. The age of the Empire has ended." Ambassador Mi-Young landed on the planet with a small diplomatic team. She met with Vashitar in the ruins of the Imperial Palace, surrounded by the ancient symbols of Kethvar power. "What happens to us now?" Vashtar asked. "Will you enslave us as we enslaved others?" "No," Mi-Young replied firmly. "We did not fight this war to create a new empire. We fought to end the idea that any species should rule over others." The peace negotiations lasted for weeks. Mi-Young worked with representatives from every species in the galaxy to create something that had never existed before, a truly democratic galactic government. The Galactic Liberation Accord established the basic principles of the new order. Every species would have the right to govern itself. No world could be ruled by aliens against its will. Trade and cooperation would replace conquest and slavery. Some species wanted revenge against the Kethvar. Others demanded that the former empire's territory be divided among the victors. But Mi-Young and her team held firm to their principles. "If we punish entire populations for the crimes of their rulers, we become no better than those we defeated," she argued. "Justice, yes. Revenge, no." The Kethvar were allowed to keep their home system and several nearby worlds. Their military was disbanded, but they were given the chance to become peaceful members of the galactic community. Some chose exile rather than accept the new order, but most decided to try to build a better future. General Song Wu-Jin established the new Galactic Peace Corps, a military force made up of volunteers from all member species. Their mission was not to conquer or rule, but to protect the weak and defend the principles of freedom. "We have learned that peace must be protected," Song explained to the first class of Peace Corps officers. "Freedom is not free. It must be defended by those who believe in it." The transformation was not easy. Some worlds struggled with the concept of self-government after centuries of slavery. Others found it hard to trust former enemies. But slowly, gradually, the galaxy began to heal. Thekmal, the old Veltar who had first met the humans, lived to see the new order established. He stood in what had once been a slave market on Veltar Prime, watching children from a dozen different species playing together. "My grandfather would be proud," he told Jamin during the Admiral's visit to the liberated world. "We have not just won our freedom, we have won our future." The humans became the unofficial guardians of the new galactic order, but they did not rule it. They had proven something important, that power did not have to corrupt. That strength could be used to protect rather than dominate. Years later, when historians wrote about the Great Liberation War, they focused on the battles and the heroes. But the real victory was quieter and more profound. Across the galaxy, beings who had been taught they were born to serve learned they were born to be free. The stars still shone in the darkness of space, but they no longer looked cold and distant. They looked like beacons of hope, promising that no matter how dark the night became, dawn would always come for those